What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, the series in which I give you an appetizer sampler glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. The goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that Force as well. So, up on the chopping block this time is by viewer request, and it is a Loyalist Space Marine chapter that, in all honesty, I wasn't truly sure how to tackle them because there isn't much written on them, and I thought I might have to reply to my comment about looking into them stating they can't be done. But they got one little interesting fluff blurb, and we can kind of infer some things from what's said. So let's have some fun with it anyway and just go with it. This is the Rift Stalkers Space Marine chapter, a Loyalist Space Marine chapter from the Ultima Founding. And they are comprised entirely of Primaris Space Marines, and they are successors of the Raven Guard. So right there, we know some things. Name, successor of, and that they're Primaris from the Ultima Founding. So if you don't like Primaris, this is not a chapter for you because that's all they are. So with that said, let's jump right into them, looking at their color scheme, their symbol, looking into the very limited fluff we have, and go from there. So the Ripstalker's color scheme is, quite honestly, you just take what the Raven Guard are and you flip it, and you have the Ripstalkers more or less. White armor, black squad markings, black chest emblem, black chapter symbol, red helmet lenses. You have black or silvery weapons. And when it comes to that black chapter symbol, it is the Raven Guard symbol, done in black as opposed to white. Really hitting you over the head with the fact that they are successors of the Raven Guard. Now, I'll come back to that in a moment, because the one little bit of potential coloration you can have to make the model pop a bit more is on their right shoulder pad trim. This is to denote company color. The same as how the Raven Guard do it now. And I say that because the Raven Guard used to use that same shoulder pad trim to represent squad type, troop, heavy support, fast attack, stuff like that. But they have since changed it with this current edition of the Space Marine Codex to be company color. So they just changed the Raven Guard a little bit, whatever. The point is, the Riftstalkers do this too, and it's exactly the same as the Raven Guard. And it's the same colorations because more or less the coloration of company color is the same. Interesting point of note for that is, white is first company. You could also say silver, but it's white. So if you're representing any veterans of your Riftstalkers, they're not going to have any shoulder pad coloration trim difference on their right shoulder pad. Also interesting of note is 5th company is black, so it'll look like kind of blend in-y, if you will, and still look good and just be kind of more the same for the chapter. Not that that's a bad thing at all, that's cool. And the rest will pop very nicely. With that said, like I mentioned, chapter symbol is the Raven Guard symbol done in black. Now, if you're saying, hey, I've seen this before, you're right. We have seen it on Raven Guard veterans who have white arms and shoulder pads, because then the coloration of the symbol gets changed to black so it stands out. But even still, this is fine, and it's not unprecedented. If you're thinking this is lazy, then you might have forgotten about the Crimson Fists, which are red symbol versions of the Imperial Fists. Same symbol, just different coloration going on. And if you call that lazy, then okay, whatever. My point is that it's not unheard of. This isn't the first time we've seen it, so it doesn't really bother me. But yeah, that is their look. It is a sharp look, but as is the issue with white armor, it's going to definitely make some people take pause. White armor, yellow armor, those two specifically tend to be the ones that really hold people back from trying out a chapter color scheme wise or whatever, or any Force color scheme wise, because those aren't necessarily the easiest colors to paint. I know it's not for myself, and a lot of people have issue doing it smoothly. So nevertheless, though, that is their coloration, and once you get white down to a comfortable level, you're gonna bang them out pretty decently quick in comparison to learning it, so not bad. Plus, the kneading up of things, whether it's sculpted detail that's going to be black or whatever, it's actually going to go pretty smoothly because black covers up all colors very nicely, so you won't have to worry about that. With that said, when it comes to their fluff, we don't know much more than what I've already said. We do know that they are a fleet-based chapter, entirely based, in their fleet, no homeworld. And we don't know too much about their fleet. Not that it really you would think to matter, but considering they're purely Primaris, you might think, hey, is their fleet any different? They're still Space Marines, so no, their fleet is the same. But they have a fleet, and we know based on their purpose, their task, they're pretty active in fleet operations because their task is to patrol the Great Rift, hence Rift Stalkers. So they are meant to patrol and actively engage anything that comes out of that rift, because 9.99 times out of 10 is going to be something hostile, which means they probably do a lot of naval combat. Now, of course, if something breaks out of the Great Rift and makes planet fall to a nearby planet very quickly, they will, of course, fight on the ground. But we can definitely, with reasonable confidence, infer that there will be a lot of naval combat for the Rift Stalkers, given that they patrol the Rift to seek out anything that might come out and kill it. In addition to this, the one bit of fluff that also gives a lot of potential for them in terms of plot hook potential is the fact that they seek a method of reconnecting with the hundreds of thousands of worlds in the galactic north, in that Dark Imperium, which is basically cut off from the Astronomicon beacon, which is very bad. So they, aside from what they do, which is patrol the rift and kill everything that comes out of it, they are seeking a way to reconnect the galaxy together again. If not physically, then metaphysically with the Astronomicon beacon. Either way, whether you have a stable real space corridor, which would probably therefore allow some Astronomicon beacon through, or just an Astronomicon beacon light going through, stable enough to provide safe transit, if you will, across the rift, is definitely important for the Imperium to establish. And it's interesting that the Rift Stalkers are seeking it out. This could mean that they either have some type of technological aptitude to try and figure this out and work on things and experiment, or they have some arcane metaphysical aptitude to try this as well, or some type of combination therein, like techno-arcana stuff that maybe you wouldn't expect to see. But we obviously don't know because we don't know anything more on the fact that they do seek out a way of reconnecting. So, nice little plot hook for the Rift Stalkers to be involved in a lot of things in the future. So, the Great Rift is huge. They're not going to patrol it purely by themselves, and they aren't necessarily going to patrol it from one end to the other, but they are going to patrol as much as they can and be as aggressive and as active as they can in their patrolling. So with all that said, and being of Raven Guard descent, as a pure Primaris force, the standard Space Marine Codex, the current Space Marine Codex that's out, is going to be the logical choice for them. As far as what you do in terms of Inheritors of the Primarch or utilize 2 successor tactics is up to you. Inheritors of the Primarch can work. They are visually just a kind of mirror opposite, if you will, of the Raven Guard. If the Raven Guard are colored like Snake Eyes, these guys are colored like Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe. Both are ninja, right? More or less. So it could still be a kind of a stealthy chapter, albeit in white. I know it's weird, but we can't just dictate what they will or want to do based purely on color, right? So whatever the case is, they are of Raven Guard descent, so we do know that with gene seed, that means you have a bit of genetic predisposition, almost like genetic memory imbued within the gene seed, to then kind of enchant the Astartes, imbue the Astartes with that genetic memory. So that means Rift Stalkers are going to have pale skin, black hair, black eyes, much like the Raven Guard do. And they're going to have certain predispositions for stealth combat, strategic surgical strike type stuff as well, and so on. So whether or not you want to just have them be counts as Raven Guard with Inheritors of the Primarch only as a purely Primaris force, or you want to go ahead and do something with successor tactics, either will work because we don't have a combat doctrine for them. We can assume a few things. A, that being a fleet-based chapter patrolling the Great Rift, they're probably very active in naval combat and have a pretty decent hold and grasp an idea on naval combat for boarding and counterboarding operations and so forth. So Zone Mortalis style combat. As well as more generic standard combat in 40k. So you can represent this with any of the successor tactic combinations you want, and you can use successor tactic combinations to still represent stealthy and something else, or you could do for a rapid assault. There's a multitude of different ways you can do the Rift Stalkers, given that we have this open-ended way in which they would conduct warfare, because we have nothing combat doctrine-wise. But they are Raven Guard, and being that they are Raven Guard, they will have certain predispositions kind of inherent in their gene seed, which now makes it inherent in that chapter. So you don't have to have it as a successor tactic or use a Raven Guard chapter tactic. You can just keep that in mind, and then your playstyle can reflect that as well. So with that all said, just some food for thought there with the Rift Stalkers. If you're going to collect these guys, model-wise, it's very simple. They're Primaris. You just need to look at the Primaris kits. Unfortunately, Primaris kits aren't as modular as standard Space Marine kits, but this does make it a bit easier to collect. You can still have some fun. And on the bright side, being that their symbol is the Raven Guard symbol, just in black, the Raven Guard Primaris upgrade stuff is going to work very nicely. The Primaris upgrades and transfers, you're going to get a good amount of shoulder pads with a more ornate version of the Raven Guard symbol on it. Just paint that symbol in black and the shoulder pad in white, and you have a very easy time of doing the Rift Stalker symbol. Now, the transfer sheets have the white Raven Guard symbol on there. If you want to take a bit more time and care, you can take this and paint those white symbols black carefully once it's on the model, and it'll work just fine too. You also, if you really want to, could make use of the Raven Guard Legion transfer sheet from Forge World for this symbol, because they actually have black symbols on there as well as gold. But anyway, just kind of jumping around here. But bit and kit wise, anything Primaris that's generic is going to work just fine. The Raven Guard Primaris upgrades and transfers are going to work as well for you. So that's all very good. Model wise, aggressors, Phobos armored dudes, lieutenants, librarians, the whole Primaris gambit is going to be there at your disposal, obviously. Now, in terms of painting up these guys and collecting them in that regard, as I made mention of, the Raven Guard Legion transfer sheet will give you also a variety of black Raven Guard symbols to make use of, and some gold if you want to kind of experiment that way. So that's cool. But you also might not want to count out the white symbols. We see them being every bit the mirror image of a standard Raven Guard coloration. We don't know much else about the Rift Stalkers. We do know, however, Raven Guard utilize white armor parts on, painted on their armor for veteranship. We see it in Shrike. We've seen it in another veteran example, Raven Guard. So maybe the Rift Stalkers might utilize black in the same way that the Raven Guard utilize white. This is purely spitballing. It's speculation. It's theorizing. We don't know. It could be entirely untrue. But if you want to jazz up your guys a little bit and make them stand out a bit, you could pull that. And for your veterans, you could give them black arms or a black shoulder pad inset, and thus you make use of the white symbol. A little perhaps awkward because it's not confirmed at all, but just some food for thought in that as well. Now, for what we do know, that white armor, you could go with the contrast method and then highlight it up from there with some layer paints of white, or you could spray them white or put a nice bold white down and then carefully go into the recesses with thin down paints or washes, or use a micro pen. If you want to do the recess shading in a black, if you don't want to have like a cool coloration like a gray or a blue or whatever, and you don't want it to feel kind of dirty with a brown, if you take a black micro pen after the paint's dried for at least a day, and you very carefully go into all the recesses and kind of do that way of shading it in, you will really make the model come to life. It'll pop and it'll be a bit easier for you, because you're using like a pen and have a bit more control, I find anyway. Just some food for thought. Anyways, that's really all I got for painting them up. And that's all I got for the Rift Stalkers. Fill up a lot of time for a lot of theorizing, I guess, but what are you going to do? The Rift Stalkers are pretty cool potential. There's a lot of cool potential there. So what are your thoughts on them? Share your thoughts, your requests, and such in the comment section below. And until next time, take it easy.